Hello and welcome to Page One Extra, the show that keeps you up to date with the latest news and hot topics in the writing industry. I'm Marco.
And I'm Tarek.
And we are thrilled to be your hosts for this new adventure.
Now, if you're a fan of our sister show, Page One, the Writers Podcast, then you already know we've had over 150 incredible guests share their writing journeys with us. And you're still going to get those new episodes and those deep dive interviews every Friday, but with Page One Extra, we wanted to take up a notch and tackle the timely issues that matter to writers and readers alike.
And we've got a packed show for you today, including breaking news from the writing world, the latest big deals fresh from the London Book Fair, and a special guest who'll join us to discuss a hot topic and give us a sneak peek into the latest work. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also be putting our guest to the test at the end, and you, Tarek, with a game and some quick-fire questions.
But for now, let's sit back, relax, and dive into the world of writing with us. On with that first episode.
We start off today with the recent news that Amazon will be closing the Book Depository. Originally a UK-based online bookseller, Book Depository was set up by a former employee as a rival to the online giant with the aim of selling less of more rather than more of less, meaning trying to sell a wider range of books than the usual bestsellers, which clearly was a lifeline for many middle-list authors.
Yeah.
It was bought by Amazon in 2011, a move, of course, which led to concerns about their stranglehold on the trade. But until the recent announcement, Book Depository remained a vital distributor for many authors, particularly in relation to foreign sales. The news of the closure is therefore going to come as a big blow. Now, obviously, it's not unusual for big companies to purchase rivals and then close them down or shutter them in some way, but it does lead to speculation about the health of the industry. This is clearly going to have some impact on authors. Online book sales are dominated by Amazon and increasingly by ebook sales. It makes sense for Amazon, of course, to lock people into their ecosystem, especially with the Kindle store. But what makes sense for Amazon often doesn't make sense for creators. The store's final day of trading will be the 26th of April, with last orders accepted until 12 p.m. on that date. And I think this is going to be a bit of a blow for authors.
Yeah, definitely. I think, the more people are funneled into one major place to buy their books, it's not really a good thing. Where you're going to see less of a focus on wide topics and genres that are open to so many people that you need that kind of entry.
Yeah, I mean, and just going back to what the aim of it was, Amazon is focused on these big ticket books and the bestsellers and the celebrity books and all of that sort of thing. So it does start to shrink the available market for authors that aren't these celebrity authors or big
and I think
authors.
It also probably shrinks the market for physical books. Amazon are great at selling a lot of stuff, but they want to keep you in, and as you said, they want to lock you in the Kindle store.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's going to push a whole lot more people down the ebook route, which is great for Amazon because they sell Kindles and they make money off that, but it's not necessarily great for the health of the industry, I don't think.
I suppose another Book Depository type site might pop up.
It
becomes increasingly difficult when Amazon has such a stranglehold on the industry.
Yeah, and they might just buy that place up and then
shut it
down again.
Exactly. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I don't think it's great news for authors at the moment.
Now, a connected story in a way, the Publishers Association's latest annual report said that 2022 was a record-breaking year for physical book sales in the UK. A whopping 669 million books were sold. That's a 3% increase from 2021. Now, interesting, a lot of this success was due to exported books, which grew 8%. UK home market revenues actually fell by 1%. But, it's impressive numbers there. We're seeing a lot of people buying and enjoying physical books, which a lot of people said, we've got ebooks coming, there's audiobooks, maybe we're going to see a drop in that, but we're seeing the opposite, if anything. And if you drill into the data a bit closer, you actually see that fiction and children's books are really doing well, as did audiobooks. And it's always heartening to see these doing well. They bring joy and entertainment to readers of all ages. And personally, I kind of think audiobooks have maybe come back in a way because of podcasts. People are getting used to
and
listening to the
pandemic,
voice.
I think, possibly was a spur. And it's not surprising to me that books like children's books and stuff still sell well physically because of the nature of the type of books that they are. I can't really ever see ebooks.
No, that's a good point.
That's
a good point.
Field.
Yeah,
but it is interesting that physical books overall are doing well. And of course, it goes back to if you watch our sister podcast, we always ask our guests real book or ebook, and much to Tarek's disappointment, the majority of guests will always say real book, which I suppose fits in with that data.
Yeah, I think as much as Amazon, as we said earlier, would love people to be locked into the ebook ecosystem, I do think physical books are always going to have a place, and probably will continue to, probably win out going forward.
Now, let's talk about that age-old question, self-publishing against traditional publishing. We've spoken to many writers in the past who've used both methods to great effect, and it seems there are pros and cons to each.
Yeah.
Lately, we've been seeing a growing trend towards self-publishing, driven in part, I think, by the Kindle store and the surge of people writing books during the pandemic. Now, a new survey by the Alliance of Independent Authors has found that self-published authors are actually earning more than their traditionally published counterparts. The survey had over 2,000 respondents, mostly from North America, and found that the average revenue for self-published authors in 2022 was just over £10,000. In comparison, another report by the Authors Licensing and Collecting Society, published in December 2022, showed that average earnings for the traditional published author was around £7,000. So what's the take-home message from this? Well, according to the December 2022 report, traditional authors have seen a sustained fall in professional writers' income over the past 15 years of around 60%. Self-pubs authors, however, are actually seeing a 53% increase in 2022 over the previous year. I suppose the most important message is to reinforce that self-publication shouldn't be seen as the poor man's route to getting your book out there. And it involves, as we know from speaking to guests, a lot of different skills and doing your own work, especially editing, formatting, marketing, artwork. But you're keeping control of a lot more of the procedure and a lot more of the proceeds, of course, as well. But I do wonder, I sort of alluded to it there, are self-published authors making more, or is it that published authors are actually making less money? It's still not a lot of money we're talking about.
No, I mean, there's a $3,000 difference between the both of them. It's not that much. I think we are seeing a drop in traditionally published authors' revenues compared to what it used to be, and I think that's partly to do with the number of people that are writing right now. The big massive headline deals that we see, and we'll chat about some later on, that's a very small number of the market. Most people are getting tiny advances, if any advances, and it's really just not a lucrative market for a lot of people to work in.
I think that's right. I mean, we've spoken to our guests about this before, but if you broke down the hours that it takes to write a book, your hourly rate would be significantly below the minimum wage, I think, unless you happen to land one of these, 7-figure book deals. Or
totally,
like that.
And I know every story seems to be coming back to Amazon right now, but Amazon plays a massive part in this, because you've got the Kindle store, which is pushing people into the Kindle store, and then it's selling those books for 99 pence, and you're getting pennies back on every book sold, and it's not a sustainable model, I don't think. How can something that takes someone a year and a team of people to bring to market then be sold for less than £1? It just makes no sense.
Funny you should bring that up. We may discuss that
later.
Later.
Interesting.
But hey, let's get on with the rest of the news first.
Now, we have some troubling news from Hollywood. The Writers Guild of America has voted overwhelmingly to strike unless a deal can be agreed by May. And it's bringing back some bad memories of 2008 strike. Yeah. Now, back then, the writer's strike caused chaos in the TV and film world. It led to shortened seasons, confusing storylines, and the cancellation of some beloved shows. We're looking at you here. Oh, sorry. Heroes wasn't actually cancelled because of the writer's strike, Marco. Marco's put Heroes in the prompt here, people. The research needs to get done much, much better in this show.
It was ruined, by the way.
It was ruined. It had a much shorter second season, which I remember because people.
The only good season of Heroes was the first one.
Yeah, but
let's be honest.
I'm not gonna, let's not dive into why Heroes was ruined by the Red Strike. But unfortunately, history might be repeating itself now. A report by the Writers Guild of America just released says that writers are being undervalued across the board in the screenwriting industry. It shows that while the budgets in TV have skyrocketed, writer-producer pay has actually decreased, and compensation for screenwriters has stagnated over the last 4 years. Now, clearly this is unacceptable. Without writers, there would be no TV shows or movies to produce in the first place. Now, as a result of the impending strike, many productions in Los Angeles and Atlanta have come to a standstill, leaving many industry workers uncertain about their future. And even if the strike is resolved quickly, it can still take years for the industry to fully recover, particularly as it only starts to get back on its feet from the pandemic-related setbacks. It's a pretty tough time to be a writer in the entertainment world, and we'll certainly be keeping a close eye on this story as it develops.
Yeah, I mean, it's. We were just talking about how much money authors make from their books, but
Yeah.
the screenwriting was always viewed as the category where you could make money. You maybe wouldn't be as well known as a writer, but
Yeah.
you would make more money. But clearly, that's not happening. Again, there seems to be a pattern that these companies. The people at the top continue to make decent amounts of money,
Yeah.
but the actual people that produce the content,
Yeah.
and with film and TV, I do think that often screenwriting is, the writer comes last in the pile,
Yeah.
and we've experienced that from speaking to some of our guests. But without the writer, you really would have no show. I know that a director is vital, actors are vital, all of these things, but the writer is just as vital. In
Oh,
that
totally.
process.
Now, my understanding is that because it's been such a massive vote to strike or potentially strike here, my feeling is that we're not going to lead to a shutdown like we saw back in '08. I think it's going to show the strength of feeling to studios that people aren't prepared to keep working like this, and if they're going to test their metal, they will go on strike again. So my hope is that studios just say, right, okay, fine, there's clear lot of strength of feeling here. Let's not test the metal. Let's just give them what they want and let's keep things going.
Well, hopefully. You've also got to wonder about the 3% that didn't vote for the strike.
Yeah.
We are quite happy to be shafted by the studios. But it's definitely a story to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
Now, staying in the world of screenwriting, Warner Brothers Discovery, as they're now called, recently announced plans for a 10-season series based on the original Harry Potter books. The series will feature a new cast and bring the beloved story to new audiences while staying true to the books. J.K. Rowling and her agent Neil Blair are going to executive produce alongside Ruth Kenley-Letts, and the producer of the movies, David Heyman, is also going to potentially join as an executive producer. Now, the announcement has, of course, sparked mixed reactions, and not only because the Harry Potter franchise has been a very, very controversial topic due to the comments made by J.K. Rowling. Fans of the original films are also worried that a new series like this might ruin their memories of the originals. Regardless, the series is set to move forward and will likely draw in both old and new fans of the wizarding world.
Marco, let me ask you this. How do you feel about another version of Harry Potter being made? Well, great books like Jade City, etc., sit there languishing.
Well, I think this is a major problem with TV and film at the moment. Is the Hollywood executives seem to be obsessed with like 3 or 4 different franchises and IPs and don't want to explore anything new. And I don't really understand it because Harry Potter was only new 20 years ago or 15 years ago or something. So, why not take the risk on what are, frankly, sometimes better books and get them out there that would be as cinematic and could generate as big an audience, I think.
No, I mean, I have to say, I find it a very odd move to reboot Harry Potter like this so soon. It's just in the sense that you've got this massive franchise with the branding, with the music, with the look of the show, with the magic, with the styles, with the costumes. Is all of that going to get chucked to start from scratch? Are they going to keep the old look?
It's that old thing of too soon. And this is putting aside everything controversial about Harry Potter, which merits its own conversation, frankly. But looking at it just from an IP point of view, it is mad because everyone still remembers it. Everyone knows the Harry Potter tune. Are they going to use the same tune? If they're not going to use the same tune, will people like it?
And you've got theme parks based around this entire look of a franchise.
It's a very strange idea, but like I say, executives seem to be very honed in on 3 or 4 IPs. You've got the same Lord of the Rings is getting new movies. There's the Rings of Power TV show and stuff like that. When there's brilliant fantasy books out there.
But then I guess it's just less risk, isn't it? They know the audience is there for it.
Well, is it less risk though? Because the Fantastic Beasts Harry Potter films haven't done very well. So
that's
why
true.
are you suddenly revisiting something? You think because you tell the old story that's suddenly
maybe
going to draw
that's the
people
thinking
in?
is go back to what they know is a success.
I'm not convinced by it, but we will wait and see. And I'm sure they know more than me what they're doing.
Okay, final news story today, Granta magazine. Now, every 10 years they put out a list of the best young British novelists under the age of 40, and their latest has just dropped. Now, it's a renowned list. It champions some great authors. Looking at the past list, you've got the likes of Kazuo Ishiguro, Salman Rushdie, and Zadie Smith. And, looking at the current list, I think one of the first things that jumps out to me was that 15 of the 20 authors are women.
Yeah.
It's the first time women have ever been the dominant voice on the list. And when you look back at the first list back in '83, it only had 6, so it's a huge increase from then. and many of the authors on the list at the very start of their careers, they haven't had much public attention to their work before now. And it brings up the interesting question, is being featured on a list like this a huge boost for up-and-coming authors? And what does it mean for those that don't get on the list? How important are these lists for authors?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer the first question, I think it must be a huge boost for these authors to be on a list like this. But you do wonder how these authors are selected. Obviously, it's just a panel of judges that make this list up. And they've obviously made some amazing picks in the past. But I do find with lists like this, being someone that writes more genre than literary, they're very, very skewed towards literary
Absolutely,
writers.
yeah.
And there's a slight sort of snobbishness in that these are the good writers. And if you write genre, you're not a good writer.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas there are some brilliant British writers under 40 who are writing genre fiction right now, some of the best genre fiction that's ever been written.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be ever considered for a list like this.
And that's something, as you see, we've seen it before. We've chatted to authors on the podcast, sci-fi authors, and then you look at people like Margaret Atwood, who is renowned as a fantastic author, and rightly so, and she's won a whole bunch of awards, etc. But she doesn't see herself as a sci-fi author. And I do wonder, is that because of the negative connotations that being a sci-fi author brings?
I think undoubtedly there is still that attitude in the publishing industry. I do think genre fiction more generally has been more accepted and people see the merits of it more than in the past. But it is still looked down upon, I think, by a certain corner of the industry. And that's not to say, I should stress, anything bad about the people on this list.
Oh, no.
Some of them I have read, and they are fantastic authors, and I'm sure all of them are, and this is going to help their careers. But I just wonder about lists like this that sort of try and say these are the best young, when you're only selecting from a very slim pool,
subjective views. It's I think, as you've said, being on these lists is a great thing and is a great boost to any writer's journey and their career. But it's if you don't get on a list, don't put too much weight in it. Don't feel too bad because they're crap. They're just bullshit.
Yeah, exactly. And now just a quick look at some of the most notable deals that have been announced, with London Book Fair, of course, having just taken place. First up, Babel by Rebecca F. Kwang was, of course, a huge hit last year, selling over £1 million worth of copies, as well as winning Blackwell's Book of the Year. And now May Chen and Natasha Barden at HarperCollins have landed a huge deal for her next two books, which feature first, an epic multi-generational historical novel following a Chinese-American family through the decades, and apparently it explores the push and pull between the individual ambition and the sweep of history. And second, a thrilling fantasy which takes a tantalising look at dusty archives and unreliable sources.
Oh, nice. Oh, another novel that's been making the waves is the debut from Harriet Constable called The Instrumentalists. It's been scooped up by Bloomsbury, and it is a huge 6-figure deal and a 7-way auction, which is, it's the dream.
Yeah, that's what every author wants.
Yeah. A second book was also included. Translation rights were sold to 11 countries, and the book tells the story of Anna Maria della Pieta, an orphan in 18th century Venice who's on a mission to become Venice's greatest violinist and composer, greedy, and who becomes the student of Antonio Vivaldi. It can be expected in August 2024.
It's Pietà, actually.
Oh,
in a case of poacher turned gamekeeper, or rather agent turned author, I don't know if that works, literary agent Sarah Hornsley's debut thriller Bad Blood has been sold by agent Juliet Mushins to editor Phoebe Morgan at Hodder and Stoughton in what has been described as a whirlwind 48-hour preempt involving a 6-figure deal and a 2-book deal. German rights have also been sold after an auction, and more international deals are expected after last week's London Book Fair.
Now, much of the buzz at the London Book Fair was around the sale of Kayleen Bradley's speculative debut novel, The Ministry of Time. It's been pitched as The Time Traveller's Wife meets David Mitchell, meets Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which is a book I've heard loads of great things about.
Yeah.
The bookseller reports that Scepter acquired rights in a 48-hour preempt with translation rights to 13 territories and 21 21 studios and production company auctions. I mean, that's
mad.
mental
Yeah.
for TV and film rights. And it's the stuff that authors' dreams are made
Yeah,
of.
I think all these deals are, but
Yeah.
that's a particularly special one. And finally, an interesting announcement by Canongate, which sees them acquiring a short story collection from International Booker Prize winner Lydia Davis. Which perhaps isn't unusual in and of itself, but what is unusual is that a condition of the deal is that the book isn't sold through Amazon, which is something we've been discussing on the podcast.
Yeah.
This is at the request of Davis, who has expressed concern that these mega corporations have too much power and control, and she specifically wanted to support smaller bookshops and businesses, which is, a great move. And if other authors would perhaps follow that, then perhaps authors would start to get paid more fairly.
So, Between the Lines is a section where we want to take a deep dive into one of the hot topics affecting writers right now. And this week, we're going to look at something which featured at the recent London Book Fair.
Yeah, there was some interesting hints from HarperCollins president Brian Murray at the fair, namely, are we going to see an increase in the price of books? Murray said that an increase was overdue and that the price of books have not moved over the past 10 years, and noted that they haven't kept up with the consumer price index. Distributors in particular are feeling the squeeze as their margins get slimmer and slimmer.
Now, compare that to the practice of Uber giant Amazon, who of course have what must be close to a monopoly on ebook sales through the Kindle store. And I'm sure everyone is very familiar with their practice of dropping ebook prices down to 99 pence on a regular term. And they went even further this week with a 53 pence release.
So let's dive into all of that now. And to help us along, we've got author and previous guest on our sister podcast, Sam Holland, here with us in the virtual studio. Hi, Sam.
Hello. Hello.
Thanks for joining us.
That's all right.
And we're going to hear about your new book, The 20, shortly. But before we get to that, just focusing on this topic of book pricing and this sort of idea of selling a book for 53p. As an author, how do you feel about something like that?
I mean, it's really hard. So when I've been an author now for 7 years, and I think in that time, as they said, the book prices haven't changed, except I think paperbacks have gone from $7.99 to $8.99, and now I think some are sort of touching on the $9.99 mark. But I think ebooks have stayed quite static at sort of, they go up and down, but the bottom seems to be either free, which is like a temporary promotion thing, or 99p. But this 53p is quite, I mean, I think it came up on Twitter when an author sort of highlighted one that was being advertised by Orenda Books by Karen as 53p. And obviously the tricky thing is we don't know what the deal is behind that. So we don't know of that 53p how much the author is getting. And I think Karen sort of said, look, this is a Amazon price match. It's not us. And the author is still getting the normal amount. But going, even if the author is still getting it sets a sort of a bit of an alarming precedent that will readers expect 53p? Will they expect 25p? Where does it stop in a way?
Yeah, exactly.
And I mean, when you look at what was coming out of London Book Fair this week, and you've got HarperCollins saying we're going to see an increase in books, and you've got Amazon dropping the price even further, how can they both be right? What path is going to win out here, you think?
Well, I mean, it's the perception, I think, of what readers will think a book is worth in terms of the consumption of it. So do readers think a hardback is worth, I mean, I don't know, some of them have been they can go for like upwards of 25 quid, can't they? Will readers buy a hardback at 25 quid, or will they go into Asda and buy one for £8.50? So it's what the readers will expect. And I'm a bit of a hypocrite in this respect, in that I don't really like ebooks. So if I'm buying a book, if I'm buying an ebook, I probably won't buy one for more than 99p, just because I don't really like them. So I feel like if I'm paying more than that, I want to get something that I hold in my hand that feels, that I'm a bit old school like that. So I am a bit of a hypocrite in that respect. But go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, at the same time, you've got people, when you rent a movie on Netflix, it costs a minimum of like $2.99. Well, not Netflix, sorry, but on
sorry,
Amazon.
it's Grandad. I was going to say you can't rent movies on Netflix.
Yeah, sorry, I've selected
Marco's
the
a bit
wrong
old,
service
yeah.
there. Sorry, but people are willing to rent things for $2.99. They're willing to pay £4 for a card that they'll give to someone once and that they'll then go in the bin and stuff like that. Whereas, and a book takes literally years sometimes to write, and then it just seems that people don't value it enough to be willing to pay, or not a lot of people to be willing to pay what would be a fair price for it often.
Yeah.
But if you can get something at 99p, and there's so much of it, it's not like, there's like 4 books in the world and you can only get a choice of those 4. There are so many books. And if you can get one at 99p, and, let's be honest, most of the authors that readers hear about are completely meaningless to them. They know about Ian Rankin, they know about J.K. Rowling. They probably know Lisa Jewell and maybe Gillian MacArthur, but the rest of us, we're just like a blur of names and crimes and women walking away on book covers. So there's nothing to distinguish us. So why should they pay more than £1 if something's there and they want a few hours of entertainment and they don't really care what they read? Why would they pay anymore?
I think that's right, and I do find it difficult to put the blame at the feet of people who are paying the prices, because it's a cost of living crisis going on. Books are a luxury item, perhaps, and if an item's being offered for 99 pence, who are anyone to say they shouldn't be paying that? It's not for us to say that. I do think my biggest issue with it is, as we've just said, it's the fairness of that, and in terms of how much does the author get in relation to their year plus.
And like you said, Sam, the sort of normalization of these prices, I think that's the issue. And people will resist. People have come to accept that an ebook is 99p generally. And like you, I'm a bit of a hypocrite here, because if I look and I see that the Kindle version is $6.99, I'm like, I'm not buying that. I'll wait until it drops to 99p or whatever. Yeah. So,
but that I find odd, that you can get a Kindle for more than you can get a paperback.
Yeah,
that seems a bit strange in my head. I mean, I'm sort of both sides of the fence in a way. So as Sam Holland, I have hardbacks which look like this, and this one costs, I'm not even sure, some amount, which is HarperCollins. So I'm not going to say anything mean about HarperCollins. But on the other side of the fence, I write as Louisa Scarr, which are predominantly digital and predominantly ebook. They do paperbacks, but Canelo are, a digital first company. And one of my books has been free for quite a few months. Like, we've been literally giving it away. I've had nothing from that book, but the justification behind it, and they've been keeping an eye on the data, is that by giving away the first one, we get people to buy the second, third, fourth, fifth, which I kind of get behind, as long as we're keeping an eye on the data and we know what we're doing. But those books, they go for 99p, £2, £3 at a push. And I don't think they've ever gone for more than that. But then I get a greater proportion of commission from those books. Mm-hmm. So on the ebooks, I get 50%.
Yeah.
So 50% of £1 is, a reasonable amount. But then I can't even tell you what the percentage I get of a hardback. Honestly, off the top of my head, I haven't got a clue.
I mean, looking
it's
at
not 50%.
Physical. Looking at physical books, is the push for 99 pence normalization going to lead to the end of hardbacks, you think?
There's something about a hardback as an author. I mean, so I'll be honest, it's partly ego. Like, to have a hardback is really nice. I mean, they do look really nice. And I think the thing about hardbacks is they're just, they're more solid. They feel like you're getting something for the money. So I don't think hardbacks will go. I think they maybe will get a little bit more sort of prestige, maybe.
Yeah, like, do you think hardbacks might sort of almost become like for event books or things like that, and it'll become more the norm that most books get paperback and ebook only, and hardbacks are only for special editions and things like that?
It would be fascinating to know the data behind it. So of, proportionally who buys hardbacks, and then proportionally all the books published, how many are hardbacks and how many are paperbacks. I'd probably guess that the majority are still paperbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always kind of thought that hardbacks must be a tough sell because they're expensive and, especially with, as we say, the Kindle book prices, etc. But they must make money off them, because otherwise we wouldn't keep seeing hardback releases coming out. So there must be a reason for them. And I don't know if is it the prestige thing? Is it okay? Do they take a loss, you think, even on book sales or the cost of production of a hardback, but because it gives it a kind of prestige look, and then you can have another relaunch in a year's time almost when the paperback comes out, and you keep the event vibe going longer?
Well, I mean, when you go into Waterstones or something and you see all the books on the tables and stuff like that, your eye will be drawn to the big hardbacks.
Yeah.
That's normally the first thing that will catch your eye. So I suppose that there is an element of marketing in that sense.
This is a better book because it's a hardback, almost
exactly.
That kind of vibe, yeah.
And especially if you're giving something away if you're going to buy it as a present or something like that.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I think having a hardback is quite nice. But also I do like that aspect that you have. I mean, because the life of a sort of author marketing is pretty short anyway. You get sort of the weeks around the launch and then it sort of goes quiet again. So if you have a hardback, you do in a way get 2 goes.
Yes.
So, sorry, you get the hardback and then sort of it goes quiet again, and then you get a ramp up again as the paperback comes out. So, and that again is targeting different people and different audiences and different, different people buy hardbacks to different people buy paperbacks.
Yeah. Have you found? I mean, you may not know this off the top of your head, but how have you found the sales of your first book broke down in terms of like paperbacks to ebooks to hardbacks?
I should have looked it up. I do probably have the numbers somewhere, but I have no idea. I should be more aware.
Okay, so let's jump to a future then where ebooks are 53 pence or less, and that's a kind of normalised situation. Nobody wants to pay more than 50 pence for a book. We've already chatted earlier on in the show about the amount of money that an author makes. We're talking like 7 to 10 grand a year, really. What's the future for authors realistically in terms of the amount of money they're going to make, how much return they get on their work? What do you see your future being?
Personally or in general, do you think?
A bit of both, I suppose.
I mean, in general, I think the more that books are devalued, or equally the more that authors are devalued, whichever way you want to look at it, if authors' pay carries on going down, what you're going to discover is that the only people that can, in my opinion, the only people that can afford to write, to be a full-time author or to write, are going to be people in a privileged position for whatever reason, whether they come from, a wealthy family, or in my situation, let's be honest, my mortgage is paid by my husband. So I don't make enough money to pay the mortgage. My husband does. And that's why I can write full time, not because I'm making any considerable money. And this is my 9th book. My 10th book will come out in July. So I've been writing for 7 years. The money I earn isn't enough to live on. So you're going to find that gets a harder and harder decision to make when authors have to have another job, or they have to have somebody that supports them, whether that's their parents or that's their husband in my case, or and it's been going to become so, which means you're going to get less diverse voices. You're going to get the same, probably middle class, probably white people telling the same stories, because author pay isn't going to be enough to sustain quite a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be going in the wrong direction just when the industry is, there seem to be steps starting to be made in terms of diversifying it and in terms of authors and things like that. But like you say, if the money isn't there, then it's going to dry up again. And the other threat, of course, is the potential of AI coming in and authors not writing anything.
I can't wait for an AI to write my book for me and just sit back and let the money come in.
Just
sell that for 20p is fine. Yeah, exactly. I'll take.
Amazon will just be pressing buttons and churning them out. They don't need you.
Oh, there'll be authors and it's booksellers, so that's actually quite scary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Me personally, I mean, I just kind of just write as much as possible and hope that at some point, like, something takes off and I make a little bit more money. But you have to, I think as an author at the moment, you have to predominantly do it for the joy. But the other problem is authors haven't got much leverage. What leverage do we have? There's thousands of us. It's like, I think when all these strikes are going on, I made a joke to my husband that if authors went on strike, no one would notice for 6 months.
That's right.
Just, it would, there's so many of us. And if one mid-list author goes, I'm not working for that money, publishers and editors will just turn around and go, okay, well, I've got 10 submissions from people that will.
Yeah, that's right. It's a difficult position that they're in. There's not a lot of collective bargaining. If they all team together, then potentially, but that's not going to happen, unfortunately.
I certainly found that with my 2 books, they were put up by Amazon, and there's a certain number of smaller bookstores that refused to stock them because they didn't want to, I guess, help online competition. And I kind of get that, but part of me was like, well, really, the only person who suffers here is me, because you're not really going to do any damage to Amazon. Let's be honest, you're a small independent bookstore. As much as I would love you to be able to throw a rock to the giant, it's not really going to make much of an impact. And if they can't buy a book through you, they'll probably just go into Amazon and buy it. So you're just going to push people that way. And yet it means that it's one less place to buy my book from. So I don't really know what the answer is. Basically,
you need the big names.
You do need the bigger names to
say something. Yeah. I mean, a couple of authors have refused to have their books sold on Amazon.
Yeah.
And you sort of do need the big names to sort of put their careers on the line a little bit and say, look, this isn't working, this isn't enough, this isn't sustainable, but they're all right. So, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I try not to get too worried about these things and see it as more of a, what's the word? What's it? So rather than writing because it's work, I write because I love it.
Yeah.
I would say destiny, but that's not the right word. Sorry, my brain's a bit fuzzled this morning. but yeah, so I try not to.
Basically, it's an absolute wasteland for authors in the next 50 years. Cool, that's fine.
Excellent. What an uplifting way to end this section.
We'll end at that, on that note.
I think you just have to think about the story that you're trying to tell, the life you want to lead and how you want to spend it, and not. I mean, we are a commercial product at the end. A book is a commercial product.
Yeah, you want to make money and make a living off it,
and publishers do need to make money, and they do need to, but maybe they need to pay us a bit more.
Yeah.
And pay us on time. That would be nice.
Exactly.
All right, well, we're here with Sam Holland, and your latest book is The 20. And in this section, we want you to pitch it to us. So tell us why people should be buying your book.
Why people should be buying it? Okay, I'll tell you what it's about, and then you can make your own decision. So The 20 begins as a DCI called Adam Bishop is called out to a wasteland where a body has been discovered. And they quickly find 4 more, so 5 in total. And they realize that there are numbers hidden, written above the bodies. So the killer is counting down. So the investigation begins, and Adam is approached by a woman who happens to be his ex-wife, who believes that these new bodies are connected to a serial killer from 20 years ago, a man that has been arrested, convicted, and is now in prison, and who happens to be personally connected to her. So that's how it begins. It sort of gets more crazy and more bonkers from there. So if you can imagine, we're counting down from 20. There's quite a high body count. There's quite a lot of blood. If you've read Echo Man, you sort of know what you're going to get. But it's very fast paced. If you like your thrillers to sort of like clip along and have a lot of complex and slightly dark, disturbed main characters, then I guess this is the book for you. If you like your books with a pink cover, then maybe give it a miss.
Avoid this one. And how did you find writing this one as compared with the Echo Man?
It was your typical difficult second book. So the Echo Man I wrote on spec, out of contract, over picking it up, dropping it over quite a lot of time with quite a lot of love from my agent. This one I sort of wrote and just sort of I knew what the concept was, I knew who the characters were, but it just sort of went a bit mad. And I had to send it to one point. I had to send it to a friend, and I had to send it to my agent and just say, what are we doing with this? And both of them said, keep it. But so there was like a few minor storylines we had to cut out because it just got far too complicated. But yeah, no, I mean, now I've come out the other side, I think it's a lot of fun, and I really like it, and I really love the main characters. But yeah, it was a little bit of a labor of love. There were several points where I thought, no, we're going to have to scrap this. This is just insane. And I thought no one's going to want to read this. It's just like, ugh.
Well, I've read it, and it's a fantastic book, and I liked it as much as The Echo Man. I thought it was excellent, and I would really recommend people do buy it who are listening to the show. So my question was, when you come to write a second book, you've got a lot less time. You've got your, as you said, you got your first book on spec, as much time as you wanted. Second book, you've got what, 8 months to a year really to knock it out from start to finish? Less than that?
No, so I made the mistake of, when I signed the contract for Echo Man, we had another publisher, who was Canelo, who was interested in Echo Man, but we said, okay, we're going to go with HarperCollins, but do you want some other books from Sam? And they said yes, basically. So I signed up at the same time I signed up to write 2 books for HarperCollins. I signed up to write 5 books for Canelo. So I wrote 7 books over 2 years, essentially.
Jesus.
No, 8 months. I didn't have 8 months. There was no 8 months.
So how long did it take you start to finish to write the 20?
Oh, 3, maybe 4.
Oh wow. That's I mean,
that's quite long.
How did you
for me
not
as well.
have a nervous breakdown writing that many books in that short space of time?
I think yes, I quietly did. I think the 20 is my nervous breakdown.
Okay.
I think that's just like basically 100,000 words of slightly nervous breakdown. But the thing is, like, I really enjoy it, so it doesn't. And once I get into a book, I tend to clip along. I tend to go quite fast. Once I've got the hang of who the characters are and where I want it to go, so it didn't feel that I was sort of like working, but my deadline was still quite a long way. As long as my deadline's far off, then I'm quite happy. And I think I finished it way before the deadline. So I had time to have that panic and send it to my agent and my friend and say, so yeah, it was fine. But I mean, it is fine. And I always said I wouldn't do it again. And then I've signed up to more contracts. So now I am doing it again.
And when we last spoke to you about the Echo Man, you told us about your research into serial killers. This one obviously features more serial killing. I mean, have you got plenty of grisly stuff in the bank for the future books as well?
Oh yeah, always. There's always. I mean, so the inspiration for this one came from, I guess, 2 sources. One was, I take the dog, who's quietly sleeping now. I take him in the woods, and I think it's something the Forestry Commission do, but basically they spray paint numbers on trees.
Oh yeah.
I assume to say we're going to cut them down or something. But anyway, so that gave me the inspiration for, obviously, as a crime writer, your mind goes straight to, of course, there's bodies under there. So originally it was a countdown from 100. So luckily you'll be glad I changed it to 20. And then secondly was my brother-in-law, bizarrely, is a consultant anaesthetist. So he spends his days sticking needles in people. But what I find remarkable about him is he actually has a needle phobia.
Oh, wow.
So if somebody comes at him with a needle, he passes out, which I find an incredible sort of phenomenon about him.
Yeah.
So it was those 2 things together. So in the book, it's a bit of a spoiler, but in the book, Adam, the main character, has a phobia of needles. And then that's where sort of it all came from, and just went from there, really. Just descended into this sort of madness.
Excellent. And so when is the 20 out?
It's out on the 11th of May in the UK, and I think the 2nd of May in the US. So,
and it's out in lovely hardback as well.
It's out in beautiful.
It's a prestige release. Yes.
I know, it's got a little
it's
shiny.
Fantastic front cover.
I can't really see it, but it's got shiny letters, and it
nice.
does look very nice. So it is out in hardback, as is the US version, which I can't find. But yeah, so 2nd of May for US and 11th of May for UK.
Great. Well,
brilliant.
Go out and get that. So, welcome back. In this section of the show, we're going to play a very quick game and test the writing skills of our guest, Sam Holland, and our very own Tarek Ashkenani. So I have given them a recent thriller and the summary of that thriller, and their challenge was to write the opening line. So I'm now going to read their opening line and the real opening line, and they have to guess which is the real opening line. But before that, I'll tell you what book it was. It was No Plan B, the new Jack Reacher thriller from Lee Child and Andrew Child.
Does he have a plan C?
Well, that'll be the sequel.
I should probably read it.
Yeah. And the summary is, when your name is Jack Reacher, the truth is always worth doing time for. Gerardsville, Colorado. One tragic event. 2 witnesses. 2 conflicting accounts. One witness sees a woman throw herself in front of a bus. Clearly suicide. The other witness is Jack Reacher, and he sees what really happened. A man in a grey hoodie and jeans, swift and silent as a shadow, pushing the victim to her death before grabbing her bag and sauntering away. Reacher follows the killer, not knowing that this was no random act of violence. It's part of something much bigger. A sinister, secret conspiracy, isn't it always? With powerful people on the take, enmeshed in an elaborate plot that leaves no room for error. If any step is compromised, the threat will have to be quickly and permanently removed. Because when the threat is Reacher, there is no plan B. So there you go. That is the summary. So I'm now going to read in any order the real first line, and your 2 attempts at first line.
Okay.
So the first line that I'm going to read you is, it started with the bus. So that's option 1, is it started with the bus. Option 2, the meeting was held in a room with no windows. And option 3, Jack noticed the woman first. So those are the
they are very good. That's
3
difficult.
choices.
They're all quite similar in the way that I could actually see all 3 of them being an opening line.
So I'm going to go to Sam first for her guess.
Right. I like the room with no windows.
Okay. Tarek?
Can I hear them again, please?
Yeah, Tarek knows that that's not. Oh, I could be double bluffing.
No, yeah, you could be. That's true, yeah.
Oh, yes, your point. I'm also going to go for the room with no windows.
Well, you're both right. It turns out we should have thought this through more clearly. In terms of how the game might work.
Because she's not going for her own and she didn't go for mine.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, that is the real opening line. Sam had actually written a second line as well. She held herself with an elegance, a confidence that showed her beauty better than any tight dress or lipstick could.
Oh, that's a very good.
He
Jack Reacher
loves
line.
talking about how women look, doesn't he? He always talks about how women look.
That's why I love Jack Reacher books so much. Just to make that clear.
Well, yeah, you both, I guess, won that one, and we'll have to rethink that for the next episode as to how that's going to work, I think. But before you go, Sam, we do have one final thing, which is some quick-fire questions. I've got some questions loaded into a program here, and I'm just going to press the button. We're going to ask you 3 of them. You just give us the first answer that pops into your head. So the first one is, what book should everyone read before they die?
Oh, my God. You should have given me a bit of notice of that one.
Yeah.
I can think of one book in particular, Sam, perhaps.
The what, sorry?
I can think of one book that you might have on your desk.
The 20, possibly.
Oh, well, yeah, but that's a bit self-promoting, isn't it? What book should everyone read before they die? What do I... God.
It's actually quite a tough question.
Sorry, this is just gaping silence. I'm gonna go off at a tangent and say, what books should every novelist read?
Okay.
In terms of helping them with their craft, and I'm probably gonna go with the book that I have up here, which is good old Save the Cat Writes a Novel. But
Okay.
it's not what you asked, but it's the only thing I can think of
That's
at the
fine.
moment.
No, that's
That's
fine.
fine.
That's fine. Next
Maybe
question.
give me another one and cut that.
If you could give one piece of advice to aspiring writers, what would it be?
Read Save the Cat.
Read Save the Cat.
Well, apart from Read Save the Cat, I would say write the book that you want to write, not what you think will sell or what you think the market is liking at the moment. Because A, you're going to be doing it for a long time, whether you write quickly or you write slowly, you're still going to be editing it over and over again.
Yeah.
And B, by the time you've written it, it's sold and it's come out, the market would have moved on anyway, so you can't second guess. And you might as well enjoy yourself because, as we've discussed,
you're not going to get paid. Okay, final question is... Oh, no, that's the same question. This is an odd question. What's your favourite word to use that you use in your writing?
Oh, that I shouldn't use quite so much.
I was getting worried what that question was going to be, Marco.
I've been using reverent all the time.
Okay.
Bloody reverent. Every single chapter. I have to search for it now and delete it because I seem to... He held it reverently. I don't even... but I seem to like it. So yeah, that's would be my favorite.
Okay, excellent. Nice. Great. Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Sam. That was a lot of fun.
That was great fun.
Thank you very much for having me.
Great. Well, thanks very much to Sam for joining us for today's episode. As discussed, her new book, The 20, is out next month.
And thanks as well to all of you for joining us on our debut episode of Page One Extra. Don't forget, you can watch every new episode of this podcast and our regular interview series, Page One, the Writers Podcast, on our YouTube channel, or you can download it as a podcast by searching for Page One Extra on your favourite podcast app.
It would help us hugely if you could subscribe on YouTube, click that thumbs up button and follow us on your favourite podcast app. Even better if you could give us a comment and a rating and review on the podcast app as well. We hope to become one of your main sources of writing news, and shooting up the charts will really help with all that.
Now, in the meantime, you can always get in touch by emailing us at podcast@writegear.co.uk or by sending a tweet in the Twitter machine, which is at UKPage1, or on Mastodon at writing.exchange/@Page1Pod.
Otherwise, we hope to speak to you on Friday in the new Page One, the Writers Podcast episode, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more writing news and discussion of burning topics affecting writers with another great guest.
See you later.